If you ever felt horrible after dropping an ice cream on the floor and pining over it about wasting money, you might feel a sense of relief watching these massive blunders we have in store for you. From expensive architectural mishaps to losing out on a lucrative sponsorship deal, these are 12 of the most expensive mistakes ever made. Let's get to it. As always, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more such amazing content. Number 12. James Howells Bitcoins. Investing for the future is always a smart move if you want to build up your personal wealth over time, but most people don't have the foresight and the patience to go through such a drill. Rather, they prefer to go either for the get-rich-quick deals or splurge their savings on a daily basis without saving. But this is a tale of an IT professional who had the foresight to invest time and effort into farming bitcoins in the initial years, but still lost his fortune because of poor judgment. James Howells from Wales had spent a significant amount of time farming these cryptocurrencies and gathered up an impressive 5,500 units of bitcoins. But back in 2013, he made a big blunder. Instead of holding on to his precious currency, he somehow managed to trash the hard disk containing his fortune. At a value of $34,000 per unit, James Howells' Bitcoin collection would have earned him a massive $255 million. That is a massive amount of money. After discovering his loss, he had approached the local council to permit him to dig up the local landfill. Unfortunately for Howells, the council rejected his request and was banned from searching for it any further. Well, that's the story of a modern-day treasure chest being lost in a sea of trash. Number 11. Sinking Millennium Tower. The world of construction and architecture is often beset with massive blunders. The industry is infamous for its enormous expenses and even more astounding mistakes, which puts an entire project at risk. Before undertaking any construction project, the team behind it needs to do thorough research about the property and the risks involved. But it seems like the team behind the construction of the Millennium Tower in San Francisco didn't do their due diligence. San Francisco is known for being a hotbed for earthquakes and rising sea levels, but that didn't stop this construction company in building this exclusive high-rise apartment in the city. It was proposed as the tallest residential building in San Fran and also the third largest building overall, but soon after its construction in 2008, it was discovered that the entire building was slowly sinking into the bedrock. By 2016, the high-rise had sunken 18 inches, and it wasn't going to stop there. They had no other choice but to undertake an expensive repair effort to reinforce the apartment's foundation. The whole process cost them over $100 million, which is almost a third of the building's original cost. What a shame. Number 10. The $25 million Superman Mustache. The world of cinema has come a long way. With impressive CGI effects to produce larger-than-life set pieces and special effects, movies have become eerily realistic. Well, not always. You see, superhero movies have captured our attention for the past decade with their impressive storylines and action sequences, but not all is smooth during production. This was certainly the case for Zack Snyder's Justice League. When the original director of this upcoming movie parted ways with the studio due to an argument, DC had to get someone else on board to take over the project. Director Joss Whedon was the man, and he quickly got the project up and running again, but there was one big problem. James Cavill returned to the set rocking a moustache. While the project was on a standstill, Cavill had already started working on the new Mission Impossible movie, which contractually required him to grow a moustache. The producers behind MI didn't budge and didn't allow him to shave, so he had to return to the production of Justice League as a moustached Superman. Left with no options, DC had to shell in a massive $25 million in getting Cavill's stash removed through CGI. The end result was less than impressive, and probably not worth the huge bill. Number 9. Dubai Islands. When you have a lot of money that you could spend, you're always looking for the next big thing to buy. One specific project which caught the eye of many millionaires in the past decade was the World Islands on the coastline of Dubai. These man-made islands were built using rocks and sand and created to represent the world map. Wealthy patrons can purchase an island representing a country of their choosing and live in their own private island paradise. At least, that was the plan in the beginning for the people behind this massive project. But turns out, nature has other plans. Many of the islands have already sunk back into the ocean, and that doesn't give a feeling of security for would-be investors. So far, only 70 out of the 300 islands have been sold, but only 2 have been completely developed for residents. As of now, a company from Netherlands have purchased a majority of the islands, and they're working on fixing the problem plaguing the entire project. This is one project which literally sank to the bottom of the sea, along with all the money that was spent on it. Number 8. The Walkietalkie. Most blunders are discovered much later, and this was the case with the unique Walkietalkie building in central London. The interesting shape of the facade brought a lot of eyes on itself, but the building had another profound impact on the neighbourhood which people weren't aware of at the time. Since most of the facade is panelled with extremely reflective glass, the rays of the sun got reflected at a very concentrated beam onto nearby properties. As a result, a lot of objects and cars suffered damages caused by this beam of heat. In one case, an owner of a Jaguar found his car's wing mirror and front badge completely melted. After a lot of complaints from the neighbours, the building owners had to pay heed and fix the problem to avoid any future melting episodes. Number 7. SNCFs Trains. What do you do if you purchased a t-shirt which was a size too small? Well, you could exchange it for something bigger. Unfortunately, not all of life's blunders can be fixed in such a manner. Back in 2014, when the French train operator SNCF won the contract to revamp the country's railway system, they began working on 2,000 new state-of-the-art train carriages. The entire project cost over €15 billion, and it had a huge amount of fanfare. But when the time came for the carriages to be in service, it was found out they were too wide for some of the regional platforms. In between all of the meticulous planning and massive investments, they somehow got this simple calculation wrong. It was discovered that France's national rail operator gave SNCF the wrong dimensions at the start of the project, and no one caught the mistake until it was too late. Since so much money was pumped into this project, the platforms had to be widened at a huge expense to make room for the new carriages. Number 6. Hoover Free Flights Promotion. Marketing campaigns are key in driving sales for any company. The British vacuum company Hoover was behind one of the biggest marketing blunders of all time. They came up with a campaign pushing customers to spend €100 worth of Hoover products to get a chance to win 2 complimentary round-trip tickets to the United States. It sounded like a good deal at the time, but they made one huge mistake. Due to the lack of specificity, it seems anyone who bought €100 worth of Hoover items could win the tickets. As you can imagine, Hoover could never have afforded such a grand promise without going bankrupt. Never forget the importance of T's and C's in any promotions. Number 5. Mars Climate Orbiter. The space industry is big talk these days. Anything that goes into space is backed by a ton of research and heavy investments. Since the stakes are high, a lot of meticulous preparation goes behind every project that's undertaken within the industry. But any project which is overseen by human beings is subject to a certain amount of human error. This error can be clearly illustrated in the tragic outcome of the Mars Climate Orbiter back in 1998. NASA had launched this space probe to study Mars's atmosphere back in December 1998. After 10 months of travel through space, the probe was closing in on the red planet, but all the years of preparation and calculation didn't prepare the scientists back home for what happened next. As the orbiter was hurtling through Mars's atmosphere, it suddenly turned into a fireball and eventually blew up into a million pieces. After a bit of investigating, it was found that the orbiter met this fate because of a small error in the calculations. The probe was calibrated by 2 different values, calculated by 2 different teams which worked on it. One team in Europe used the metric units, while the other team from the US used the imperial system. It seems obvious now, but no one saw it coming at the time. Number 4. King Tutankhamun. Working at a museum seems like one of the most stressful jobs out there. You're surrounded by high-value items which are priceless and irreplaceable. A wrong move could mean the destruction of an historical and culturally important piece of artifact. This certainly was the case for the 8 employees who worked at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, who somehow managed to detach the beard off the famous face mask of King Tutankhamun. The 3,000-year-old mask is one of the most valuable artifacts from the country, and weighed by this fact, the employees tried to glue it back to hide their mishap. It was later found out after a series of investigations that the employees had returned back to the artifact multiple times to fix the mask using metal tools and even more glue. And the 8 employees were finally caught and put on trial for negligence and violating professional standards. They landed with a lengthy prison time as a result. If you think working at a museum is a cakewalk, maybe you should think about this story. Number 3. Blockbuster says no to Netflix. Back in the 80s and 90s, Blockbuster videos had a huge impact on how entertainment was distributed. They were one of the most valuable companies at the time and were a big part of pop culture as well. But they made a mistake over the years. They didn't keep up with the times. After the internet blew up, Blockbuster didn't consider taking a similar path as an up-and-coming company called Netflix. While Netflix was evolving and making the best use of new tech, Blockbuster stuck to its old ways. But the biggest blunder they made was when the CEO of Netflix offered to sell the company to Blockbuster for a mere $50 million. Thinking it was a joke, Blockbuster shrugged off the offer, and the rest is history. Now, Netflix is worth around $194 billion and has essentially killed Blockbuster for good. If things went the other way, maybe Blockbuster could have been the Netflix that we all know and love now. Number 2. The most expensive can of Pepsi ever. Getting a sponsorship deal from giants like Coca-Cola is a big deal, but it's also a stifling contractual affair. This became very clear to Brazilian soccer star Ronaldinho back in 2012 when he lost a sponsorship deal worth $500,000 due to a mess-up. After Coke signed up with Ronaldinho for a contract to exclusively promote and drink only their products, the soccer star made an expensive mistake. During a routine press interview, he was seen with a can of Pepsi on the table. Although many admit that it was an honest mistake, it wasn't enough for Coke to look the other way. Ronaldinho ultimately lost his contract with Coca-Cola and lost a small fortune as a result. Number 1. Lotus Riverside apartment. When it comes to constructions and architectural marvels, China has been leading the race by a huge margin over the past few decades. They've constructed some impressive structures like dams, skyscrapers, and other urban infrastructures. But among all of these incredible projects, there is a share of construction mishaps which happened due to poor research and lack of quality checks. This issue became glaringly clear when Shanghai's Lotus Riverside complex apartment collapsed back in 2009, killing one worker. The engineers behind the project didn't take into account about the increase in water levels of the neighboring river, which made the bedrock of the foundation unstable and eventually caused the entire apartment to collapse. Oddly, the developers had already sold 489 flats out of 629 even before the building was completed. I guess rushing never does anyone any good. A similar incident happened in Japan as well. Japan is prone to earthquakes, and by and large, most buildings and structures in the country are built with this fact in mind. But when Japan was hit by an earthquake in January 17, 1995, the 6.9 magnitude rumble devastated the city of Kobe. One of the most damaged structures was the Hanshin Expressway, which was the main transportation route between the two cities of Kobe and Osaka. The expressway was supposed to withstand the quake, but investigations revealed that the Hanshin Expressway had an inadequate structural design. This was caused by insufficient shear capacity, prematurely terminated longitudinal reinforcement, and inadequate hoop anchorage. Over 10 segments of the expressway were destroyed by the earthquake and cost the government $4.6 billion to get it back up and running. That's a steep bill. And that's all. Enjoy the video? Let us know in the comments about which blunder made you wince the most. Before we let you go, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Later.